So, what do you think the fate of the androids will truly be? Do we hear "Ain't anyone"? Hey folks, MasakoX here. Now this story started off from one of the most quaint and simplistic notions. When asked what might happen if Roshi had been felled in the first opportunity by his pupil Goku, I mean not felled, but stopped, you might think that nothing would have ended up happening. Well, at least nothing worth speaking of. Well, that's where you're wrong. Sometimes the smallest of changes make the biggest of impacts. If Goku were to not have gotten his lesson in discipline and humility, it would have probably turned him into the biggest and most arrogant jerk this Dragon world has ever seen. I can certainly tell you that a lot of you in the comments could not stand him and still can't stand him. And for good cause, to be fair. He's being very, very stubborn. Nevertheless, with this one becoming a little bit of a loose cannon, the rise of Tenshinhan is very obvious in this story. So, for those wanting the Triclops to be more relevant in the story, here you go. This is your lucky day. In the last part, we had future Trunks reflecting on what had been happening the past few days. He had met the legendary Son Goku, and then realized that most of what he had been told by his friends and family in the future was either overly sugar-coated or just straight up not true. Piccolo in the present, though, gave him some comfort, and with this newfound understanding, Trunks decided to stay in the past this time around, spending some time with Piccolo, as well as the Saiyan minions of Vegeta. Nappa and Raditz quite liked the boy, deeming him to be a rather good kid, handling the power of the legendary Super Saiyan rather well. It was best for them to come together in this time against the increasingly irritated Goku. He was not the best teacher of Super Saiyan, that's for sure, as many of you would recall. In the end though, they all managed to get the golden power. Even the likes of Raditz did so, and with great fanfare. And not a moment too soon, in fact. The likes of some rather colourful and interesting individuals arose from the depths of Gero's sublab. And no, it wasn't the clown, or the teens, or even the doctor himself. Get your trucker hats at the ready, folks. It was starting to fall apart once more. After the illusion of Goku had fallen into the most distant of bad memories for him, the future boy had to deal with yet another upheaval of what he thought was going to be the constant. Trunks had thought that the worst was behind him. No, Goku had finally gotten off of his case, sure, when it came to his power, but he was wrong about everything going back to normal. These three people standing before him for the cause of the Doctor were not what he was used to. He had no clue who they were. Not only were these three androids instead of the two from the future, but they were nothing like the ones from his timeline. This made things all the more unsettling. These beings not only exuded strength, just by looking at them, they really looked the part. Also, why was their leader wearing a trucker hat? All these questions for later though, but they still left the future boy utterly unsure as what to do. Goku though, just straight up didn't care. As far as he was concerned, Trunks had said androids were coming, and here they were, and they needed to be stopped. The silver-haired droid then spoke once more, cutting Goku off from his musings. I'm Android 13, and these here are my brothers 14 and 15. We're y'all's, how you might call it, welcoming committee. Just as well. It seems that there are quite a few of you Saiyans looking around. Goku stepped forward and looked ready for action. Yeah, and we're gonna kick your metal butts out of here. I've been waiting for this moment for years. Goku looked at this android in the same stern manner that he gave the greatest of his enemies. Tenshinhan felt that. Is that so, boy? Said 13. You been expecting us? Well now, why you gotta ruin the surprise like that? Goku grimaced and wanted to just get on with the battle. But the android seemed to be absolutely adoring getting under the Saiyan's skin. The Doctor very much is excited to see what you're made of. As am I. The humans were also there, but watching from a distance, quite frankly, glad to not be subject to the focus of this rather unorthodox band of mechanical men. Tenshinhan didn't want to get close to Goku, in training or out of it. Having said that though, although he was training on his own, he wanted to see what their Saiyan allies would do for their cause. Would they actually play along with the narrative and stop the androids as intended? Or would they basically just get embroiled in their own battles and ideals, leaving the Earth merely as their own stage for utter destruction? Well, that answer was about to make itself known. The battle didn't just begin, It exploded into life. Goku had had enough and lunged forward, but much like he got with Trunks, a nasty surprise was what greeted him. Admittedly, Goku did not expect the three androids to be total and utter weaklings, no, but their attacks were backed up with quite a massive power that Goku had to stop with wonder for just at least a microsecond. Even though the cyborgs were outnumbered 5-3, the trio seemed to have the upper hand still. And what made this even more formidable to face was the ever more apparent trait that these three were built to work in unison. Their attacks were always in sync, as if they knew what each other was going to do before it happened and without them having to say anything. That couldn't be said for the Saiyans, sadly. But despite them training together for many months, if not years, all that time wasn't really an exactly harmonious occasion. They were a total shambles in comparison, almost like it were every monkey for themselves, wanting to outdo the other. This was happening on many occasions, and 13 was loving it. My, aren't you apes a bunch of dimwits or what? If you knew we were coming, you're making a mighty bad show of it. Get your act together. Of course, all of this had been noticed by the likes of Piccolo and Tenshinhan, and they were cursing themselves. This act of discord cost the Saiyans more bruises than they could afford to get. From what the humans could gather, the trio of androids didn't even seem to have been worn down really, barely at all. They seemed like they could do this all day. It was an utter horror show. Imagine if Trunks hadn't shown up, whew, that would have been even worse. And Vegeta, he was one of the biggest disruptors to what the Dragon team had envisioned. He was especially trying to outdo everyone else, including Raditz especially, and to a lesser extent Kakarot. Despite the very real danger before them, the prince just couldn't let himself get past his ingrained desire to prove his regal status before lower class Saiyans. He was just too strong to resist. Goku, however, was not humouring the prince whatsoever. Throughout all of this, he had eschewed the likes of 14 and 15 and was instead busy showing his dominance with his encounter against Android 13 exclusively. Goku wanted to make this a leader duel, unaware that the trucker hat wearing automaton was merely a puppet in someone else's game. This was just the starter, and Goku was being played. With an impressive array of moves such as the Energy Squall and the Deadly Bomber, the machinations of Gero had proven to be pretty devastating to the environment and the fighters from Earth, and really the buildings around them too, because remember, we're not fighting them in the Arctic here. And this caused the other Z fighters to cease standing from the sidelines and instead trying their best to help with the evacuation of the civilian population around them. Piccolo and Tenshinhan had wished that the Saiyans had just moved the fight somewhere else before doing this, damaging less people. Where was the need to fight in the wastelands when you needed it? And despite his desire to stomp 13 into the dirt, Goku, as well as Trunks, were the only two Saiyans concerned over collateral damage and harming other people. Remember, Goku may be a jerk in this story, but he's not a bad guy. And they felt a sigh of relief when the rest of their teammates had actually presented themselves with some pretty quick acts of rescue when it came to saving civilians, leaving them to deal with the threat at hand and not worrying about harming anyone else or any innocent bystanders. But our Saiyan heroes luckily had something left in their arsenal. They hadn't yet powered up. No, my viewers, they were still in base form. This was all part of Goku's plan, to lure in the androids into a false sense of security and arrogance. The Saiyans were testing the nefarious machines and, quite honestly, things were less rosy than they would have liked, but not too concerning given that they were still in base. They were pretty tough, these droids, sure, and the destruction that they had caused was pretty major for the populace, but Goku and the others weren't too worried ultimately. However, enough was enough. Goku, Vegeta, Raditz, Nappa and Trunks, in one single unison, decided now was the time to go Super Saiyan. The golden explosion was enough to throw Android 15 down to the ground, and the rubble around them was forced back to reveal a flat arena of sorts. This also definitely surprised the human group, who had finished up evacuating the nearby citizens. This was really shocking, because they hadn't yet seen every single Saiyan at once attain the form yet. They hadn't been told that. Yamcha was trying to make out the scene of all of these transformed titans and was struggling. I can't tell. Is Nappa transformed as well? Krillin nodded, but had to admit that it was still kind of cool to see, but still tricky. They they had to rely on their energy sensing for confirmation that Nappa had gone Super Saiyan 2. Still though, Chaozu wasn't all that fussed about the Saiyans powering up. In fact, something else had caught his attention. The sidekick of the Triclops had spotted something rather untoward. He had managed to spot some weird-looking bugs sitting on a nearby tree, all pointed in the same direction, at that battle. That was weird. Surely anything nearby would have wanted to get out of there sharpish and just not be destroyed. It was almost like they were actively watching the encounter. With the arrival of this new power, the tables had very much turned in the favour of the Earthlings. Well, at least when it came to the likes of 14 and 15. Those two had seemingly started to back off, realising that they weren't going to be able to put up much of a direct fight. But Vegeta, he wasn't going to be the one to give any of the androids any sort of breathing space. Without warning or holding back, he blasted 15 into pieces as Super Saiyan Vegeta. Next up were Raditz and Nappa, who managed to break 14 into his component parts with their combined might and understanding of one another. At least they were in some sort of sync. It seems that the androids weren't really a threat after all when against Super Saiyans. Trunks then was confused instead of happy. This seems too easy. You're right, boy. We're not the main event. Although I certainly have a few more surprises up my sleeve. 13's smile broadened, and all the scrap parts of his brothers started to connect with him, turning him into something unstoppable, blue, and completely taciturn. Vegeta still felt overly confident despite this turn of events, and learned the hard way of the power that was Super Android 13, much like in the original movie. Meanwhile, Chaozu had taken Bulma aside and pointed her toward those weird bugs. It seems that they too were mechanical. Weird. Piccolo was then brought in to check them out too, and he had noted that they were also emitting a rather strange sound that only he could hear, him using his very sensitive ears. And they quickly realised it would probably be better to destroy these things rather than keeping them around any longer. Perhaps they had something to do with the androids that had shown up. They managed to blast away almost all of them, although Piccolo noted that one of them had managed to escape in the explosions, going into what he believed was some sort of stealth mode. Meanwhile, Super Android 13 had clearly proven to be an uncontrollable menace, being able to handle all 5 of the Saiyans, Super Saiyans, easily. Hard to break it to you guys, but we have to work together to put him down. Trunks breathed heavily, expecting there to be some blowback or resistance from Goku especially. And what do you know, brat? Your information was incorrect. Vegeta was pretty irritated at this unfortunate twist in proceedings. Ironically though, Goku was the one to come to Trunks' defense. Be quiet, Vegeta. He has a point. What do you suggest? Someone has to put constant pressure onto the android. Nappa, Vegeta, can you deal with that? Nappa smirked. Constant pressure is my middle name. Vegeta mumbled something, but decided to help as well. And so, Vegeta and Nappa began firing all they had to muster onto Super 13 with a huge flurry of powerful ki blasts. Daka daka daka, baby! They weren't damaging him though per se, but they were definitely causing the droid to remain on the defensive. Raditz! Goku! Fire the strongest Kamehameha and double Sunday that you can toss into him! From the sides! Goku reluctantly agreed, but Raditz, however, he was pretty excited that he could use his signature move. 2 powerful blasts went into Super 13's side, who this time had to take the full hits from the blasts after being forced into its defensive position. There was no time to switch. But then he retaliated and was able to hurl everyone away from him with a super explosive wave. Everyone, that is, except Trunks. Trunks was waiting above the beast and used his sword to pry open the wound on the android's body, cutting through it and revealing the mechanical innards. The young half-Saiyan didn't get away with this, and he got punched for this act of bravery with an immense strength after this. But he gave the rest of his teammates an opening, enough time also to get back on their feet and aim everything they had in the ki department into the damaged wound and that area of Super 13. The android couldn't act in time to get away and was literally blown apart from the inside out, and as for his smaller bits, they were vaporized. After that, the 5 warriors collapsed, them totally spent. They had done it. At least they'd finished the first round. Trunks was aware of this and reminded everyone of what to expect. This is not over. I don't think it is, though. Remember, The trucker guy said that they were the welcoming committee. And we barely got out of it in one piece. We need to find a way to get stronger fast, or at least head them off at the pass before more droids show up. Piccolo looked at them concerned and decided to take a flight up to the lookout. You know, there is a way to get strong fast. Tenshinhan looked at Goku calmly. What do you care? Tenshinhan remained steadfast though. Come on, we can resolve our differences after this is over. But there is a way for you to all train in record time. What is it? Trunks looked at Tenshinhan. Back on the lookout, there is a special training place. One day here is a year's worth of training in there. Goku scoffed. Huh, typical. You choose now to tell us this? I should have known. You trying to be all high and mighty with us. We could have been more Vegeta interrupted him though. Go on, Triclops. Do you think this lookout guy will allow us to use it? Tenshinhan looked to the sky. Well, that depends. Kami was pretty restless that day. He felt the fight between the androids and Saiyans from up top. He was even more restless when Piccolo appeared. Kami, we need to talk. Meanwhile, deep in his hidden lab, Dr. Gero was pretty pleased with the first results, him accepting the fact his first 3 droids had fallen to bits. It's a shame that only one of our drones made it out of there in One Piece 19, but the defective androids did their job rather well, giving us better readings on those Saiyans before acting for real. We were close to victory already. But that data, yes, that data is going to be very helpful. 19 only nodded and looked at the screen, showing the 2 of them some very weird symbols and numbers. This time, Gero will be ready for Super Saiyan. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. What do you folks think? Who will get the Rim of Spirit and Time treatment first? Will Goku finally get over Tenshinhan? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!